Ok, donc salut à tous, c'est VoLo, toujours à la Gamescom, sur les stands indés. Et là, je suis donc avec Jordan de distance. So, thanks for having me. First off, what is Distance?
So Distance is an atmospheric racing platformer. So the core idea is you're dropped into this mysterious, dark, twisted city, and you're trying to figure out how to survive your way through it. The city's essentially trying to kill you, and to make it through, you basically have to use all these different abilities like jumping, flying, and rotating to do like parkour type maneuvers like wall rides and ceiling rides, and you're going to need everything that you've got to make it through to the end.
Everything in a car, right? Okay. So, like, just graphically speaking, when you see the game that is running in behind us, you can see that there's a lot of Tron inspiration, I think, and just cyberpunk in general. What came, where does that come from?
So the original project that spawned this project was a game called Nitronic Rush, and that game was basically Tron and Rush, the Rush series of games, specifically 2049, kind of taking the idea of, it's almost like the 80s vision of the future. What did they think the future was going to be, where, you know, back in the 80s? And I think a lot of people thought it was going to be neon over the top, and the music's blaring from everywhere. And we kind of wanted to embrace that in that student project. And then we kind of, you know, moving from Nitronic Rush to Distance, the idea was to take that core idea and make it more flexible in terms of being able to create stuff with it, but still have that base sensory overload, you know, super over-the-top neon visuals that catch your eye.
We got like kind of a synthwave vibe with the retro futuristic way. Okay. So you mentioned that before being Distance, it was a game called Nitronic Rush that you made in Digipen, if I'm not mistaken. What was it like there at Digipen? Like the work rate, and how did you end up like doing working on Nitronic Rush that became Distance?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long and complicated process at Digipen. They have a 4-year degree for programmers, and a bunch of us were in the programming degree. And when you hit your 3rd year in school, that's your first time they want you to do a 3D project. So everybody, before you go to the school, you look at the great 3D projects that came before you, and they get into awards, competitions, and stuff like that, and you're just like, maybe someday we'll be able to make something that cool. So I think a lot of the people that worked on Nitronic Rush had that in the back of their mind of how can we blow people's minds, how can we do something completely insane, and different people had different aspects to contribute. But one thing that the original core team was excited about was 90s arcade racers, and kind of seeing like if that's possible. Racing games have basically never been done at Digipen before. I mean, never done on that level. They have been done a few times, but they're just so hard to make. And you really need someone who understands the physics and someone who understands the level design to be able to pull that kind of stuff off, and we had those people. So that project kind of it started with the idea, and then it became, I think, a bit of an obsession for people on the team, and they would, you know, push off their other classes so they could spend all their time working on this one class. And then I came in probably about halfway through working on it. I was still working on a separate project entirely, and I started to move into the Nitronic Rush team to help with music and some production stuff. And then kind of by the end, I was pretty well integrated in, and I was just excited because we had just barely gotten into taking that game from this is kind of a cool random fun thing to this is something that the industry has never really seen, which is combining atmosphere and mystery and story and narrative and all these ideas in a racing game, especially one that's kind of more on the minimalist side and not like Fast and the Furious.
To stay on the differences with Nitronic Rush and Distance, Nitronic Rush is more arcade based. Like there's more of just like you do the run, you finish the level, you pass to the next one. But now with Distance, which is in early access, if I'm not mistaken, yes, yeah, okay. There's now an adventure mode. There's like some cutscenes. I can understand that now there is like this story about the city that is trying to kill you, but I do have like this idea from the beginning, like from Nitronic Rush, just you didn't do like all the cutscenes.
Yeah. So especially in Nitronic Rush, it was us learning how to make video games. I think that game came out really well, but it should be kind of surprising because it was the first time anyone had ever made a 3D game on that level. And I think especially for us, going into this game, it was like, okay, now we know what we're doing. Let's like take every idea that we have from that game and step it up. But in reality, we didn't really know what we're doing, and it's still a bunch of experimentation and saying, okay, I think we can kind of see how the end would look, but how do you actually get there? How do you achieve that great mystery, and how do you achieve that engagement? And for us, sensory overload is kind of the default state. We're constantly just like bombarding players with stuff, and that hasn't changed in the previous game. But definitely, like, the adventure mode is an evolution of the story mode, and the arcade side of the game is expanding on what we did in Nitronic Rush. So we added multiplayer and a much more powerful level editor in this game. So we have Steam Workshop support. People are able to make their own levels. They even can make their own little stories. They even write it on the description page of, here's what happened in the backstory before you got here. And that kind of stuff is something that is like the most logical next step for this kind of game for us.
Okay, so you kind of stole my question. I wanted to talk about like the multiplayer. What, and that might seem weird because like you are talking about you want to do an atmospheric racing game, but in multiplayer. How can you achieve atmosphere in a multiplayer setting, which is 1 to 4 people?
Yeah, so in split screen it's up to 4 people, and then online it's up to 12.
Okay.
So I think the best way to consider the game is early access largely has been an arcade experience, and the adventure mode that you're going to have when you kind of start off, when you first start going into a distance, is setting up the world, setting up the environment, setting up kind of the tone of the art direction and the audio and all that. But the game actually kind of has 2 halves to it. Once you complete the story mode, the arcade side of the game opens up, and multiplayer is kind of just one of those like, okay, it's really just all about let's just go fast in a cool city. And you're not so much worried about whether or not there's some threat in the city that's going to, chase you down and you have to figure out the story. So it is mostly like a very arcade experience, but that kind of ties into the level editor side of things, where some people do make games that are just gameplay driven. They're not trying to tell a huge story, and they're just really fun. They just look cool. And then there's other people that their main focus is to tell a story, and they will make the gameplay maybe even deliberately slower, so you have more time to take in the environment and kind of do that. And that's one of the coolest parts of the game to me, is how flexible it is in terms of allowing both branches.
Okay. About like the level editor, and so you're using Unity 5. You made the switch now. So the game is available on PC and PS4, or
just on PC. Right now it's on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and then PS4 when it hits 1.0.
Okay. Like you said, the level editor is based on like with Steam Workshop. You can subscribe to the maps, and then it downloads them automatically.
Yeah.
Do you know if there will be like a way to get like the maps from PC compatible on the PS4 version?
At the moment, we haven't really announced how that's going to work. There's a really good chance that at launch the PS4 won't have the level editor, and it obviously won't have Steam Workshop support, but it's such a big part of the game that we are trying to figure out how to deal with that, so we'll announce that when we're ready, but it's something we're looking into.
Okay. So there's no release date or anything for the PS4 version, or is there a release date for the PS4 version?
We're currently aiming for most likely Q1 of next year, potentially very end of this year. I mean, we're basically aiming for very end of this year, but I would say expect it by the beginning of next year.
Okay. Well, I think that's okay. That concludes it. So, as for like what I think about the game, Distance is a game that I follow like since the Nitronic Rush days. Actually, it's a game that almost made me go to Digipen. Then the 20k per year made me like, no. But like the game is really sweet. I highly recommend it. So distance is 20.
20 USD.
Yeah, it's 20 USD, so 20 euros on Steam. So as you said, it's on Mac, Mac, Windows, Linux. So it's on everything, and you can expect a PS4 port later on. So when the game exits early access, but do not fret. Even if it's just early access, you can go and buy it now and have a really good time. The game runs smooth, super fast, and it actually supports like every weird resolution, like 21:9 and all. It works with it, and that's pretty cool. Like, play this game in 4K and be amazed. So yeah, buy the game, buy Distance. If you don't have the money, well, try Nitronic Rush at least, so you get a feel of what it is. And yeah, so thanks for having me, Torben.
Yeah, absolutely.
And VoLo signing out.